Marley from the Energy Boutique with your Energy and Ascension Forecast for Sunday, February 16th to Saturday, February 22nd. Okay, so let's talk about this last week before we jump into what's coming at us this week. Last week, we had a major timeline shift, which of course popped off on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, which I'm going to rant about once I get going here, because this wasn't your typical Super Bowl. Yes, we all know that that's a ritualistic thing in order for the powers to be to stay in power and control. And usually there's a dark, nefarious type of energy that happens around that particular ritualistic event. However, this time around, it was a lot lighter. It was a lot brighter. There were a lot more triggers and activations, markers, if you will, to let us know that we are definitely progressing on a higher timeline than we were at this time last year. And that, essentially speaking, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of people waking up in ways that we thought were kind of done beyond and past us. So I don't know if you felt that particular energy shift, but it is definitely a positive one. And if we take a look at the Schumann Resonance, it started popping off on Sunday and it literally did not stop and kind of hasn't stopped. It did die down as of yesterday, but it kept us at a very high energy level here all week. And of course, pushed us into that full moon in Leo that we had on the 12th. That was a major heart activation, really opening up our heart space, allowing us to put that emotional baggage down. And of course, kind of orient to where it is that a major pivot point is taking place, not only in our heart space, not only in our exterior realm, but for the collective's timeline as well. The old world is falling at a rate right now that is a beautiful thing to watch fall to the ground and collapse so that we can't go back to it. But of course, there's still a lot of attachment to that old version of self, to that old life, to that old way of being. And of course, the full moon in Leo was really kind of helping us out to defrag some of those emotions, that heart space, in order to kind of, again, lighten the load and help set us free. And of course, if you're listening to me here Friday evening and you're live in the chat, first of all, I want to thank you for being here. Secondly, we today had Mr. Mercury, ruler of the mental plane, ruler of information communication, how it is that we express ourselves, move out of the Aquarius energy that has just been popping for the last 3 weeks. I don't know. But there is a connecting dot type of energy that happened with that Mercurial Aquarius energy working together, kind of binding our higher mind with our lower mind. And I think many people have had some profound revelations, making a lot of sense out of a lot of very crazy and chaotic things. And of course, that is the whole point. That is the whole job of that Aquarius energy, is to push us into a new level of awareness, push us into new levels of consciousness. But of course, it gets exhausting. Our poor old headspace, our poor old noggin is just exhausted. And of course, with Mercury now shifting into Pisces energy, that's going to kind of soften, I'm going to say, that rapid accelerating process of kind of sorting out the pros and cons and who and what needs to stay, needs to go. We are definitely going to be in a more gentler type of energy in that Pisces energy, but also keep in mind, the first part of a Pisces transit usually is a little bit dark. Usually is a little bit depressive. Why? Because we have to acknowledge the parts of self, the old thoughts, the old ideas, the old inner workings of our brain. We have to release that. We have to do the shadow work to unpack a lot of that in order for us to do the releasing and the purging that we have to do in Piscean energy in order to get to the good parts, to free up the space, if you will, so that we can start receiving new intuitive downloads, new intuitive insights, especially where new creative energies are concerned, really inspiring us to kind of pivot onto a new path, into a new mission, into a new purpose. So again, we're still going to be in an adjustment period for this particular shift. And again, reminder, if you're not aware, you want to pay special attention to what's going on just as Mercury's coming into this Pisces energy, because Mercury will eventually be moving into that Aries energy, only get about 9 degrees into it before Mercury goes retrograde, hand in hand with Venus, of course, and they're both going to come back to the Piscean energy. So there's going to be a lot of topics and themes that we're going to be revisiting. And again, another reason why I'm going to recommend, if you haven't already, to download your February energy guide that keeps you in check, in alignment with all of the things, and gives you a beautiful reference point to come back to in a couple of weeks when we're going to be hella confused and feeling torn and all over the place. We're going to want to come back and see what was going on for us at this particular point in time, because again, we're going to have to restructure, revisit, release, reactivate, rebuild, reanalyze a lot of topics and themes that we're just coming into, that we're just having the realization about. So what do we got going on this week, you may ask? Well, we're wrapping up the final days of Aquarius season, and we will be jumping into Pisces season here on the 18th. And of course, we move into this Pisces energy. It's the last sign of the zodiac. We have some endings and closures, some releasing, some purging to do in order to create the space, in order to receive new intuitive downloads, new intuitive insights that is going to kind of inspire us, fulfill us, fill up our cup, if you will, with new hopes, new wishes, new dreams that eventually, when we move into the new astrological calendar, the new astrological year, when we move into Aries energy, we will be able to take action upon. Side note, we are going to be moving into eclipse season here very shortly. So there is going to be a semi-chaotic start to that new year, and therefore a delay in a particular well, in a sense, delay meaning the intentions that we have, the plans that we have, they're going to get derailed by that eclipse energy. Not to say that they're going to be totally scrapped altogether, but normally when we move into a new astrological calendar, we know what we need to do right out of the gate, and we take major action right out of that gate and make things happen in a short amount of time. That's not going to happen this year. Again, eclipse energy, we're not in control. The universe is going to sort us out and put us on the path that we failed to put ourselves upon. But why I'm talking about something that is going to happen in a month from now is because what we're doing right now, moving into the Pisces energy, is clearing the space for new things to actually be initiated upon. So Pisces season is always a little bit dark, a little bit damp, a little bit depressive. It's equally enlightening and inspiring and just a beautiful vibe in order for us to put the pieces back together in a much better, much stronger way before we jump into a brand new chapter of life. And it is coming in hot. We'll talk about that as we get going here. This week, we also have the last quarter moon popping off in Sagittarius. So that's going to be taking place on the 20th. Again, if you do not have your new moon Aquarius moon manifesting guide available to you, you should get that. We're going to be wrapping up this lunar cycle. And again, the next lunar cycle we're moving in, eclipse energies. So we're definitely wanting to kind of tap into the moon's energy that allows us to kind of consciously figure out what we want to manifest, what we want to build. Because once we move into that eclipse energy, it is anybody's game. And it is definitely going to throw us around and toss us around like a rag doll, like we're in a washer machine. Again, we have no power, we have no control. We just have to surrender and go along for the ride. And of course, this upcoming eclipse season is going to be a little bit, I'm going to say a little bit different, only because we have one event still in this Aries and Libran axis that we're going to wrap up, that we're going to put behind us. And then, of course, we're diving into the Virgo and Pisces axis that we're going to be working on permanently for the next 18 months. So that's going to be a wackadoodle time. This is also going to be the last week for Mars being retrograde. When I say to you, specifically Cancer and Capricorn peeps, but realistically all of us, because we've been paralyzed, we've just been kind of sidelined, we're losing motivation and determination, we're losing hope and wishes and faith, all because Mr. Mars, who rules over our physical energy, the actions that we're able to take in the exterior realm, his ass has been sat on this bench since December. Okay, this is no joke. And so we are all looking forward to Mars going direct. It is going to be just an amazing shift of energy that you're not even going to really understand until you're like in it and living it. But this is going to be the last week of Mars being retrograde. So I would suspect there's going to be a lot more jitteriness, a lot more restlessness, a lot more ants in our pants, because again, just want to give you a visual here. It's like we're at the starting line of a race and we're all lined up. And, we have the eye on the person that's either going to drop that green flag to go ahead or, shoot off the gun to let us know that it is time for us to move on and move forward. And we are jittery as all F because we're worried that A, we're going to jump the gun or get disqualified, or B, the gun's going to go off and the green flag is going to drop and we're going to still be in a state of paralysis. Okay. So this energy is building and it's creating a lot of jitteriness. And what I think is even more interesting about this is that, we're in Pisces season. The water element is going to take over. The water element, again, is very cleansing, very purifying, very refreshing, very renewing, especially where our emotions and our intuition is concerned. Then we have, Mars going direct eventually here in this Cancer energy. I think that's a beautiful water on water action, because we're going to be emotionally and intuitively motivated to take action and make moves. We've been sitting on it. We've been percolating on it. We know exactly what needs to be done. We're just kind of, losing patience at this particular juncture. And so, we have a lot of water element really supporting this particular go time, if you will. And as you know, water energy is about emotions and intuition and inspiration and creativity and psychic abilities. And that's what we do in Pisces season, is we get recalibrated and realigned so that we are kind of tapping into new abilities, so that when we move into the new astrological new year, we have everything that we need in order to literally activate those creator abilities and bring a brand new earth, a brand new version of self online. And so this last week is definitely going to be tricky with Mars in the retrograde, but us, again, initiating into the depths, the darkness, if you will, of that Pisces energy. It's going to bring a lot of anger and frustration up. It's going to bring a lot of sadness up. It's going to bring a lot of jitteriness up, and it's going to make us feel hella defensive in a lot of different ways. Lean into it all. We have a very short amount of time to do this shadow work before the green light go ahead is going to put us back into that battlefield, back into the playing field, if you will. And we are going to strategically need to get our shit together, emotionally speaking, in a very quick way over the course of this week in preparation for go time. Okay, so we'll talk about that as we get going here as well. Before I jump into all of the Ascension symptoms and the rants that I want to do here this week, of course, I have a couple of things on my list that I would like to tackle before doing all of that. And of course, I want to start off with thank yous. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for liking, for sharing, for commenting, for dropping beautiful emojis in the comment section below. I want to thank you for interacting with each other, supporting each other, letting each other know that, you know what, we're not cray-cray. We're not alone going through this. We're not alone with the aches and the pains and the wild dreams and the sadness and the endings and the closures. It is super, super important that, again, we double down on this community, on like-minded individuals, that we build each other up and support each other through these tough times. And when I say to you that Pisces season is going to be a very tough time, it always is. But this year, I think Pisces season is going to hit a little bit harder just because Saturn, of course, wrapping up his time in Pisces season. Neptune in his rulership, he's about to leave Pisces energy for the first time since 2011. We have Mercury already in this Pisces energy. We have the sun moving in this Pisces energy. And Pisces energy, typically speaking, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, but there's a lot of death. There are a lot of souls that choose to go home, back to source under this particular influence, because again, it is a completion of the soul's evolution for a lot of people. And that death, that ending, that closure here in the physical realm seem to rock people in a way that, again, brings out the darkness, brings out the shadow. Now, yes, on the collective stage, there's going to be certain situations that I will not talk about and that I will not name that are unfortunately horrible and horrible for us to watch. However, part of the greater, grander plan. So we have to reassure ourselves that even the bad parts that we're witnessing are essential to the, let's call it, futuristic fabric of humanity's destiny here. shit's going to get real in Pisces season. And this is even more of a time where we have to support each other, where we have to have empathy and compassion, not only for ourselves, but for each other, where we have to really lean into the whole one love, one unity type of thing. And we're really going to have to not suffer in silence. And I want to drive that particular point home, because a lot of people do suffer in silence, and a lot of people are in a situation where they don't want to share the struggles that they're currently going through. And of course, that doesn't help anyone. You have to be real, raw, and vulnerable. You have to share what you're going through, the pain and the trauma and the hurt and the overwhelming weight that you are bearing on yourself. Because when you let that out, not only does it release some of that energy, but you're going to find somebody going through the same thing. And that is going to eliminate the isolation, the alienation in which you feel. And of course, we are all here to build each other up, to support each other, and to make sure that, again, we all know that we are not alone. I also want to take this moment to thank those of you that snagged up a spot for that whole news service that I put out, Attract Your Perfect Match. And yes, I did kind of initially create it for this Valentine's Day special, just to help people understand their unhealed and unconscious patterns, and of course, how that is attracting certain people to them that we don't want to attract anymore. And of course, do a deep dive in your chart to figure out your natural attraction pattern from the healed version of self. But I've had so many people inquire about it, because of course I could only do so many in the course of this last week. But I think I'm going to make that a permanent service. Of course, it won't be in alignment with the full moon in Leo. However, there's other moon events that could definitely help heal those particular parts of self. So if you are stuck in a trauma bond, if you're stuck in a toxic pattern of attracting the same kind of people over and over and over again, and you just want a happy, healthy love, that may be a service that could definitely help you out. I've had a lot of really positive feedback from those that were able to snag that spot. And apparently it unlocked a lot of, I'm going to call them, shadow parts. I'm going to call it a lot of connecting of the dots. Thank you, Aquarius season, for that. On, where the toxic patterns that we learned in childhood, how that kind of, puts us in a situation to be attracting the people towards us that, of course, mirror back the unhealed version of self. So I will be putting that back on my service list for those of you that have been inquiring about whether or not I was going to offer that again. I will be. So if you're interested in doing that type of shadow work, please book yourself a spot. The other thing that I wanted to mention before we jump into the good stuff here is that my March appointments are now available on my calendar. And y'all are going to really want to jump in as fast as you can and snag those particular spots up, because we are moving into the most crazy, most chaotic month that we have here all year here in 2025. If you haven't listened to the 2025 year ahead overview that I put out at the beginning of the year, you probably should. But if you did, you would know that March is crazy and chaotic, with retrogrades, with eclipse season, with major heavy hitting planets on the move. And so I did open up a few more extra spots than normal, because I suspect that people are going to be losing their damn minds because of these energies coming at us. And it is better to be proactive, I would say. So if you're interested in making sure that eclipse season isn't going to toss you around like a rag doll, I would highly recommend that you book yourself a spot. So the last thing on my list that I would like to talk about here today, before jumping into the Ascension symptoms for this upcoming week, is our community spotlight. So first of all, I received a beautiful package in the mail. I had no clue, first of all, what this package was all about. It was beautiful, okay? First of all, my favorite color, purple. Came in a purple envelope, so I knew it was going to be just absolutely amazing. Secondary to that, I opened this beautiful package, and the card that was sent by this beautiful, beautiful community member really tugged on my heartstrings. And I'm not somebody who gets sentimental or emotional very often, but let me just tell you, and again, I'm going to keep this kind of to myself here, but the words that this individual spoke to me in this card were so triggering to me in the most positive of ways, because let me just tell you, I literally have no idea where my message goes. I have no idea the impact that I have on people, and not that I'm looking for people to kind of, blow smoke up my ass, so to speak. But when I receive messages, online, or in this case, in a beautiful package with just, super, super amazing things that I'm going to tell you about here in a second, this person shared with me that I had impacted their life in a way that I had no idea. I had no idea that I was helping this individual or individuals like this individual in the way that I apparently have been over the course of the years. And so, first of all, the card was an absolute tearjerker, was stuffed with beautiful little trinkets. But the community spotlight this week is on hidden embers. So we have a beautiful community member with us and has been with us for a very long time. Her name is Abby, and her partner, James. They have hidden embers. They are based out of Bay City in Michigan. So if y'all are in that area, I'm going to recommend that you go and you check out their artwork, their craftsmanship. Everything is handcrafted specifically, and you should see it on the screen right now. This is what I received. Tie-dye, like nothing, okay? Nothing makes me more happy and giddy like a little girl than tie-dye. And I was lucky enough to be gifted these beautiful tie-dye pieces by Abby, just because she was overwhelmingly thankful with gratitude for what I've been able to do for her, and I didn't even know that I was doing it, okay? So this is what I mean about community support, guys. Like, you don't know where your information, where your knowledge, where your connection, where your words of encouragement, you don't know where that is striking people, okay? And you may be walking around thinking that you don't have an impact on anyone, let alone the world, and then realizing, whether you actually get that validation or not, that, there is a ripple effect of kindness happening here. There's a ripple effect of attitudes of gratitude happening here. And so I just was overwhelmed, first of all, that somebody would take the time to, write such a beautiful card and to think of wanting to gift something so beautiful, like handcrafted, so good. Okay. Like, I love watching artwork be created. And so, I'm going to have their information on the screen here. I'm going to include it in the description box below. I do have a link to our community spotlight program on my website. And for this upcoming week, you're going to see Hidden Embers kind of sponsored and supporting all of these videos that I put out. If you're on my blog, then you're going to see their beautiful artwork kind of splattered, if you will, through my blog space. Basically, what I'm getting at, guys, is that we got to boss up and support each other, okay? Following social media platforms, following these handcrafted, beautiful artwork pieces, that is where the love is at. So I am really going to encourage you, first of all, if you're into tie-dye, check this girl out, okay? She's amazing. Cannot tell you how in love I am with my new gifts. But the chainmail jewelry that they create and the little trinkets that they got going on in their shop, like, oh my goodness, if I was closer, I'd definitely be physically going to their spot and checking things out, because I'm sure the energy there is just absolutely beautiful. Because you know what? I felt the energy coming from this individual, and it's genuine and it's sincere. And I feel like every single piece of artwork that they put their hands on is infused with just a level of energy and a level of love that you're going to feel through their artwork and through their craftsmanship. So, this week's community spotlight on Hidden Embers, I'm really going to encourage you to go support your community. Get them on Facebook, get them on Instagram, get them on TikTok, go visit them. Physically speaking, if you're in that area, we got to boss up. We got to show each other some love and support. You never know the impact that you're having on people. beautiful, and that is the greatest message that I wanted to share. So I thank you so much to Miss Abby for sending me this beautiful, lovely package that I, like, when I say that I was giddy over seeing this tie-dye, you have no idea, okay? I'm making a special place for it on my little altar with all of my beautiful things and my incense and my, pictures of my doggies. Everything that I love is getting infused in an extra layer of energy with this tie-dye, okay? So if you're into all that, definitely go check them out. Even if you're not into all of that, watching them work is a beautiful thing. And they have a lot of very interesting content on all of their social media platforms that really kind of gives you a bird's eye view on how they go about creating the beautiful pieces of art that I am very lucky to have received. So thank you, Miss Abby. Thank you to Hidden Embers for the love. It's all coming back to you threefold, of course, and I'm really going to encourage each and every single one of you in this community to do your part, to go show some love, go show some support. Side note, if you've already been in contact with me and I've told you that I was going to send you a link in order for you to complete the intake form in order to be kind of spotlighted in this community spotlight program, I'm a procrastinator. I haven't forgot about you, okay? I am definitely going to get that to you over the next week or so. I've just been hammered with other things that have taken priority, and so I did not forget about you. I did not sideline you at all. I just am a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of interest that, this beautiful community of very talented individuals, may I also add, have in being spotlighted. So again, I am going to get my shit together. I am going to, keep my promise. You will receive that link. And for anybody that I haven't been in direct contact with, I am making that intake page as, I'm going to call it, easy flowing as possible. So you all will get those updates as I have them. So again, this week's Community Spotlight, thank you so much to Miss Abby and Hidden Embers for all their love. Please go over, do all of the things, smash all of the buttons, show some love and support for our beautiful, talented community. Okay, with all of that being said, let's jump into this week's Ascension symptoms. Okay, so the Ascension symptoms for this week. Well, before I jump into that, let me have just a little bit of a mini rant on something that I already kind of touched upon. This timeline jump, this timeline shift that, of course, we had on Sunday. And I, for one, there's a lot of talk out there in this New Age community, the spiritual community. Everybody, every single day is like, oh, timeline jump. Ooh, timeline jump. There aren't as many timeline jumps as you hear about, to be honest with you. There are shifts in vibration and frequency. There are shifts in awareness and consciousness, but actual physical timeline jumps are actually a lot rarer than what you would kind of hear for this New Age gossip, the spiritual community always wanting to say, especially looking at the Schumann Resonance. Every single time that there's a huge blast of light, everybody's like, oh, timeline jump. And if there's missing data and therefore, a black space in that Schumann Resonance, everybody's like, oh, timeline jump. No, not necessarily. But I do believe that Sunday Super Bowl was in fact a timeline jump. And I think it's interesting because, first of all, a lot of people that think that they're awake are still not seeing things as clearly as they should, and not that I want to get into giving you a rundown on what that Super Bowl performance was all about. But at the same time, you have everybody saying, oh my goodness, Kendrick Lamar, he's dropping those, golden Easter eggs and he's talking cryptically about power to the people and all this kind of stuff. May I remind you guys, Jay-Z is in charge of the entertainment part value of anything that happens with the Super Bowl, with the NFL. And we all know that Jay-Z is sitting at the top of a very ugly, corrupted type of pyramid scheme here. And we also have to understand that they, quote unquote, they are controlling what looks to be like a, let's call it awakening. They're also controlling that. And so it bewilders me how many people were super excited about, Kendrick Lamar coming out and doing all these, crazy cryptic messages. Is it good? Sure. It's bringing a lot of attention, a lot of awareness, and it's obviously hyping people up to the extent in which we're having this new level of awareness and level of consciousness being reached. But, to fully paint the picture for you, even the good times, even the good moments, even those breakthroughs, they're all controlled, okay? If you think that they are not in control of even the revolution or the awakening, you're still being misguided, okay? So yes, was it a win? For sure. There were a lot of beautiful things that happened. There was that representation of the Eagles winning, which of course is very symbolic to the Phoenix Rising, specifically with some of the not so great things that happened to New Orleans just, a couple months ago. There was that redemption factor. There was also an owning, if you will, of this whole, T-Swift thing, which if you actually believe that that's a real relationship, you still don't understand marketing and politics as far as, oppositional forces coming together to promote a particular agenda. That whole romance thing is all fake. What we have to really kind of focus on, what the takeaway was the high volume of energy and the hopefulness, even if it's a delusional hopefulness, that people are now reaching as they, again, peel back the layers and somehow are becoming more empowered through these little Easter egg nuggets getting dropped and through this crypticness of this, revolution taking place. If you've been with me for any amount of time, you would know that I have been saying 2027 is the make or break for the revolution. And if you don't realize by now how the revolution is being set up, we are seeing it in front of our very eyes each and every single day. And so although, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy, although I'm not trying to, knock the wind out of your sails. For those of you that thought that this was, the whole Kendrick Lamar thing, the crypticness, the messages, the revolution, all of that stuff, like that was a major breakthrough. Please understand that was scripted. That was a scripted event by the evildoers to make us think and feel like there is some sort of breakthrough, that there is some sort of rise in consciousness happening. Yes, there is, but not in the fake way in which they are trying to create it. And again, just a reminder here, when you kind of, scan out and you see the greater, grander picture of what's going on here, everything that they are doing is pushing for this prophecy to be filled. Pushing for, again, the small group of evildoer people that actually think that they're the chosen ones. They are forcing the biblical scripture, the biblical prophecies. It's man-made. They're making this happen. And so it's very false. It's very inauthentic. It's not naturally or organically unfolding in the way that it quote unquote should. And it's just very jarring to see people walk away from an event such as that thinking that, Kendrick Lamar got one up on the system when realistically speaking, he's a part of the system. I know some of y'all don't want to hear that. But anywho, it was a real timeline jump. And I think that if you look at the energy that was captured on the Schumann Resonance, you would be very in your face that there was a major event that took place with the amount of focus of everybody coming together. And I think that is a really valuable lesson. Like, think of what happens when you have the majority of the collective focused on one part or another all at the same time. That's what happens, is that we keep raising the vibration and frequency, and we keep raising the level of awareness and consciousness. And so imagine, a global event that was actually scripted for our health and wellness and our overall well-being, and having everybody's time, energy, and attention be poured into that, what we could do in a shorter amount of time. And this is, I think, both a positive and negative lesson for us to be learning that, there's power in numbers. The negative part of that is that they're asking for our time, energy, and attention to pour into scripted events that empowers their beast that essentially we're trying to take down at the moment. Just think of how powerful that could be if we created essentially our own beast to fight the war of their beast, And if we kind of all got in alignment and started focusing our time, energy, and attention on the kind of world that we want to be living in, there's power in numbers, and we have the absolute superhuman force at this particular juncture to make that shit happen in a faster timeline. If they are able to manufacture a biblical prophecy in their favor when they should not be favored at all, think of what the real light beings, the real children of God, the real chosen people could actually do if we all just got out of focusing in on how disgusted we are at what they're doing, and we start focusing our time and energy on the new earth, on the new world in which we want to be living in which we want to create. Nonetheless, it was a significant timeline marker. And if you've been with me for any amount of time, you would know that I've been waiting for specific timeline markers. And I truly believe that I received that particular marker on Sunday. And so we are in a different timeline than we were at not only this time last year, but even, I'm going to say 6 months ago, 4 months ago, we did rise up to a potentiality of a timeline that we didn't even see off in our horizons, even, like I said, 6 months ago. So that's all positive. Now we just need to maintain it. Now, to a certain degree, the lower level timelines are collapsing. So there is a particular no turning around point. We can't go back to a lot of the situations and circumstances, the systems, the structures that were in existence in order to support that old world, that old corrupted world. Yeah, we're still in a state of corruption, but we're moving further and further away from it. The more and more people begin to wake up and actually learn the wisdom and knowledge that those smaller groups of people have been trying to withhold and keep from us all of this time to keep themselves in a state of empowerment. That wisdom, that knowledge is now being sprinkled throughout the collective. And again, numbers matter. And we are rising at an accelerated rate. So let's just hope that we can stay on this timeline. And let me just say to you, there is going to be a major, major, major event on the collective stage that is going to be absolutely horrific. And it is going to be scripted in such a way because they want to essentially knock the wind out of our sails. Here we are on a high. We just timeline jump, which means that they're aware of the levels of consciousness that the collective is reaching. And that's when they kind of pull these types of events out of their pocket in order to make us sad and angry and disgusted and have our hearts broken, and just basically they bring out the ugliest parts of the world in order to try and slow our growth and evolution down. And so when we reach a particular timeline marker, such as we just did, there is this awareness on both sides that things are changing. And for them, it's not good signs that things are changing in the way that they are. However, they are going to pull out an absolutely shit show, catastrophic event here very shortly. I would suspect prior to eclipse season, probably all the way through eclipse season, because that's what they do. They align it with some of these powerful markers in our patterns and behaviors in the cosmos. And so we need to be prepared to not react to it, to not have any type of energy lent to it. That is the only way that we can shut these people down, that we can collapse these particular corrupted timelines and evildoers for good, is to stop playing into their script, stop playing into their handbook that they have literally been following to a T to create as much hate and division and hurt and pain and disgust as possible, to keep those higher vibrations lower, keeping us in a state of paralysis, fear, disgust, and anger. So when the shit starts hitting the fan, you need to resist giving it that time, energy, and attention at all costs, because that's how we shut this game down. So I just wanted to kind of plant the seed, so to speak, that is probably something coming up in our very near future, and that we have to see through it and give it no mind, no energy, no attention, and understand that that is their attempt to kind of knock the wind out of our sails, and we're not going to let them do that. So that is my timeline jump rant. I want to talk about the fact that, Pisces season, I know I kind of already set the scene that Pisces season is wrapping things up and preparing us for the new. But again, there's a lot of endings, closures that take place in Pisces energy. And although endings and closures are absolutely necessary, it does leave a little bit of a hurt, a pain, and a trauma, a scar, if you will, on us in our own individual lives when there are certain endings and closures that are taking place, and on the collective stage as well. And so I already kind of previously mentioned how there's going to be a huge wave of souls that are going to be leaving the earth. Again, connect the dots with what I'm saying here. Connect all the different little pieces of the seeds in which I'm planting here. There's going to be a major group of people that are going to be leaving the earth plane throughout Pisces season to return back to source. And most of them are probably, there's a good chunk that are naturally in their soul contracts, ready to wrap things up, ready to kind of move on to their next mission in another plane. But there's also going to be a major group of people that are going to have to cross over into their next lifetime unwillingly. And I know that sounds horrible, but again, piece it together, prepare yourself for this. There's a huge group of people that will be leaving the earth plane throughout Pisces season. That is the time where we do kind of wrap things up, contractually speaking. And even if you don't choose to kind of do it in a natural way, your higher self did choose to be a part of the collective release of souls, the wave of souls that will be leaving. And so again, for those of us that will be left behind, so to speak, we really have to keep ourselves in check. We really have to make sure that, again, we're not allowing the natural process or unnatural process and progression of having souls return back to source affect us in such a way that it snuffs out our own light. And so there's going to be a lot of energy forcing this ending, forcing this closure. Again, let's kind of, just revisit the fact that the shadow part of Pisces energy is the unconscious self, is the shadow part of self, is the delusion, the confusion, the escapism, the quote unquote victimhood mentality. I say that because, and again, another key word here that I'm going to have to make sure I don't say out loud to have YouTube, again, penalize me. But there's going to be a lot of unalivings. There's no pretty way to say it. Unalivings. And here's why I'm going to kind of use this as a segue to build you up in a positive way, because drugs, alcohol, even pharmaceutical prescriptions have more intensity on us in Pisces season than ever before. So a lot of the quote unquote unalivings that may actually be taking place may not be intentional. It may be that the bodily physical system just cannot handle what is quote unquote normal to be putting in your body. Now, I would hope if you're a starseed, if you're an energy worker at this particular juncture of the healing journey, that you're not on drugs, that you're not, using alcohol. Pharmaceuticals, of course, are a little bit debatable. Sometimes you need medication. That's okay. But even medication that you've been on that you need to help you could have more of an influence and an impact because of the level of sensitivity that we all move into throughout Pisces season. So when I say to you, if you are kind of, indulging in the escapism of what drugs and alcohol and all of those things are, you're really going to want to pace yourself. There is a high potentiality that things are going to hit you a lot more intensely than ever before and take you off of your guard. And if it does not take you out completely, put you in a very, very uncomfortable situation to have to, get that out of your system and to really fight to kind of keep your consciousness, so to speak. When I talk about Pisces energy being unconscious, we have to understand that unconsciousness can come from, again, putting certain things in our body to make us in an altered state of consciousness. What I would also say is that disassociation and delululism is very high. Yep, that's a new word added to your Marley dictionary, delululism. It is a comfort zone for many people to be living in Delulu land, especially when reality is a little bit too harsh for us to be anchored into. But there is a very dangerous zone that you can enter into while trying to run and hide from reality. And if you cross that line, there is an altered state of consciousness that you might not be able to come back from, whether it is drug or alcohol induced, pharmaceutical induced. You can even put yourself in that particular state of psychosis. And again, Pisces season, very high for specifically spiritual psychosis, because again, the sensitivities that are going on in our physical form just make us highly susceptible to having the world that we're used to walking be a little bit too intense for us to be living in at particular points in times. Like our psychic abilities are coming online. There are triggers and activations taking place in our DNA coding through Pisces season that aligns us with the higher realms of inspiration, intuition, and basically intelligence. And it can do a number on your headspace. And again, throw you into a state of psychosis that you may not be able to come back from. So we want to be very careful about what we're doing and what we're allowing in our headspace and what we're focused on and what we're putting in our bodies. Because again, we can go balls to the walls very quickly and not be able to kind of pull ourselves out of it. We need to pay special attention to the sensitivity of our body and how our body is reacting to things that, typically speaking, we wouldn't normally have a reaction to. So as I previously mentioned, normally when we first dip into the Pisces energy, we dip into the darkest parts of it. And it's a hard thing to adjust to. And it does bring on bouts of depression. And it does bring on a lot of the heaviness, a lot of the weight. Now, you know, usually it starts off with our individual weight, but if you are, you know, a light worker and you're doing your part, alchemizing the collective shadow into something that we can work with, then you're probably going to be picking up on the collective's depression as well. And so we have to make sure that we're checking in even when we're feeling it, whether it is yours to own or whether it is a weight that you are willing to carry for the collective. Either way, it's going to put a lot of pressure on us in ways that we haven't felt before. That we haven't felt, I'm not going to say before, but maybe in a different dynamic. Because again, may I just remind you, you know, Saturn and Neptune being in this Pisces energy as they are wrapping up their time in Pisces energy is going to give Pisces season this year around a totally different vibe. The North Node is in Pisces energy for Jeepers' sake. So, I mean, we have to understand that there is some karmic unraveling going to happen at a very accelerated rate that none of us are going to be prepared for in order to, again, help us purge, release, clear that space, clean that slate for the new things to come. But those new, you know, inspirations and downloads and intuitive guidance and new visions for the future, that doesn't come until later in that Pisces season. And the hardest part, I think, is acclimating from coming out of this high-strung, jittery, overly anxious, manic type of electricity energy that we've been sitting in with this Aquarius season. And then we do a deep dive in the water. And yeah, that may kind of, I'm going to say, calm the central nervous system down just a tad. It calms us down so much that it takes us to the opposite extreme where now we're going all the way to the bottom of the ocean in that darkness where we can't see shit, where we have to unearth a lot of that parts of self that we didn't even know was still alive and well at the bottom of the ocean, the bottom of our soul, the bottom of our spirit. And so I think, you know, just looking back on the patterns that I pluck out of all the different seasons and compare them to each other and all this kind of stuff, I think that the transition into the Pisces energy is the bumpiest part of that particular ride. And of course, when we get halfway through Pisces season, things will definitely lighten up and we will be able to kind of orient to the positives and feel lighter and brighter and really do a lot of very intense healing on ourselves. But it's that first part that really gets to us. So we have to expect there to be a dramatic energy shift, a lot of pressure, a lot of darkness that gets triggered and activated within us here this week. And, you know, we dive into this Pisces season on the 18th, and then on the 20th, we have that last quarter moon taking place in Sagittarius energy. And a last quarter moon of any lunar cycle is a reflection back to this particular instance. We're looking back to the new moon in Aquarius. And we are now, because we have these revelations, we've had certain epiphanies, we had certain situations and circumstances pop off. Now we're weighing the pros and cons. We're figuring out the to-do list of what we need to release, what we need to wrap up before we prepare to jump into something new. The Sagittarius energy, thankfully, is very optimistic, very silver linings-ish, definitely hopeful and wishful, very confident that we have what it takes in order to kind of see this particular chapter through. But it also lands us in a brand new truth about things, and sometimes the truth hurts. And so, with the truth kind of giving us a bitch slap of reality here as we enter into Pisces season, and fun fact, which I thought was very interesting as I was sitting down and kind of reviewing the week that we have coming at us, the fun fact that I want to share with you is that the moon shifts into Scorpio energy before the sun shifts in Pisces energy. And I think that is both beautiful and a little bit scary. Why? Well, because the sun and the moon are always going to illuminate for us new wants, needs, and desires and what we have to do to actually get it. Of course, we know that the moon in Scorpio is no joke. That's literally when we do the shadow work to break down the system of our soul and our spirit, where it is that we're overly attached to trying to keep things the same. It is a fixed water sign. And where it is that the deep change, the deep transformation in our soul and spirit takes place in that Scorpio energy in order for us to rise up again. So just as the moon is kind of, illuminating the darkest parts of our unconscious self that are literally limiting us and holding us back, the sun shining a bright light in the Piscean energy is going to illuminate what needs to end and die within us in order for this new beginning to actually have the space to be born into. So I think that that's going to be hella intense for us to be experiencing here this week. And some of the physical manifestations from that, well, let's talk about it. First of all, we are going to see a little bit of a diminishing factor in that intensity in our headspace, for sure. But again, the headspace that we've been in under the Aquarius season, and therefore Mercury in Aquarius as well, it did give us that emotional detachment in order to act as the observer. Well, those days are gone. We're going to feel everything in this Pisces energy, and we're going to feel everything, not only that we own, but that belongs to the collective as well. And most of it does not feel good. That's what shadow work is. And so I would say that, yeah, there's going to be a shift in our headspace, but with that shift is also coming a different perspective, a different lens, a different narrative. And for the most part, just because today, here, Friday, February 14th, we just had Mercury shift in this Pisces energy. And although that is blending our intellect with our intuition, it also needs to kind of drudge up, if you will, a lot of the negative narratives, a lot of the old memories that are still kind of holding some trauma in it. Again, the hardest part is the transition into a new sign, into a new energy. So although there's going to be a little bit less head pressure, the not so nice narrative is probably going to take over, and we're going to feel it all. And, the heart activations, I would say, aren't going to be as intense, specifically in relation to the full moon in Leo activations that we just had over the course of this last week. However, what I would say is I want to imagine, again, Pisces season is the ocean. And I want you to imagine that we're all out in the ocean. We're treading water. We're trying to keep our head above water, right? We're at this particular juncture, we just got thrown into the ocean. So there's a little bit of a shock to the system temperature wise. Again, we're treading water and we're doing it a little bit more rapidly than we should, because again, we're putting all the time, energy, and effort into acclimating to this particular energy. But I also want you to just consider the pressure of the water on our physical bodies, right? So, breathing is going to be a little bit more labored. That heart activation that, definitely focuses in on that chest space, the breathing is going to be a little bit more labored. It's going to be harder to get that stabilized full lung of air. It's going to feel, again, like, we've been in the ocean for a lot longer than we have. Temperature regulation is going to be a very hard thing to do. Typically speaking, we get cold feet in Pisces season because, again, we are wrapping things up and we're about to initiate a brand new chapter when we move into the new astrological calendar. But we still don't really have a plan. We still really don't know what awaits us. We don't even know the steps that we need to be taking, thus the cold feet. But considering the fact that our whole body is now, floating in the cold ass ocean here, we've been kind of erring on the colder side of energy waves coming through us anyways. Again, I think it was last week I talked about how When you have a wave of cold energy coming in, that means that like your meridian channels are open. That energy is like channeling through you with ease. When it's kind of hot and you have this overwhelming wave of hotness coursing through your body, that's attempting to break up some of the energy blockages in your body. That's the fluctuation. And I'm not saying that we're not going to go from hot to cold. I'm just saying that there's probably going to be more cold parts in Pisces season than warm parts. And again, we just have to consider that Pisces season is about keeping our head above water and facing the fear that we have that we aren't going to be rescued. And really just realizing that we're out in this damn ocean with no land in sight. And we just have to surrender and trust that, the universe got our back, and that if we kind of stop fighting against the current, so to speak, and we learn to float and surrender, that those waves are going to carry us home. And this is a trusting process, and it's a very hard process to be trusting when all of the physical realm signs and symbols are telling you that you're nuts. You're stuck out here in the middle of the ocean for good. And if you don't start swimming in a direction that you think land could be, then you're probably going to die out here. It's hard to trust. It's hard to not swim. It's hard to surrender. It's hard to float. So we're all going to have those particular realizations. And again, the temperature is going to be shifting into colder energies. We have to understand that there's going to be a lot of restless leg syndrome, a lot of sea legs, if you will. Just think about treading water. Think about what it's like to say, tread water for even a half hour and then to get out and to stabilize on land again. It feels very uncomfortable. It feels very weird. It feels very awkward. And so, we're just starting what is going to be a month-long treading of water, so to speak, but we are also going to spend no time wasted, if you will, jumping into the ascension symptoms that have a major effect on our lower extremities. So cold feet, sea legs, not trusting your legs, not feeling stable on your legs, especially at night, having that, niggly feeling of the restlessness, like the jitteriness where you just want to crawl over your own skin type of thing, likely going to be taking place in those lower extremities. What I would also want to say is, let's go back up to the face for a second. Yeah, the head pressure is going to subside a bit, but that feeling that you get when a sneeze is coming on and your eyes get really squinty, and like there's like this itchiness or this vibration, this like weirdness in your sinuses waiting for the sneeze to like get its shit together, and then it never does, and it just kind of lingers there, and it's like this really weird feeling. Well, we're probably going to have that for the foreseeable future, but definitely coming on in a very intense way here this week. And so again, anytime that we're talking about sinus issues, or we're talking about sneezing, or, all of that, we're talking about third eye. And you best believe that we are operating more from the third eye through Pisces season than our two physical eyeballs. And so, with a lot of the activations, again, with psychic abilities coming online, with this recalibration of energy coming online, with this deep purge and release that is needed before we can kind of receive those new codes for us to understand what we need to be taking action upon, what we need to be bringing to life once we move into that new astrological calendar. Like, there's a lot going on in that headspace. Now, granted, I think that, there's always going to be a little bit of a sinus issue there, but I also want you to think about what it's like when you're swimming and when you're out in the ocean, whether, you're having fun or not, doesn't matter. Your nose runs for like days after you get out of the water, and it's like a liquid, watery run. And I would suspect that we are going to have a lot of snotty issues. There's no cute way to say it. Snotty issues and phlegm coming up from the chest space as we're trying to, again, keep our breath stable as the pressurized system of the ocean's force on our physical body is giving us a good go. Back to the eyes for a second. Yeah, like when you're about to sneeze and your eyes get right squinty. Well, it's almost like we're being blinded by this new light. And when I say light, I mean like information and knowledge and perspective, but also like the light of the sun, as we've been discussing for God knows how long now, isn't really the light that we're used to, and everything really seems a lot brighter than it should be. And literally, it just feels like we are in this squinty type of situation where we're really having to, squint those eyes together in order to see clearly. And let me also just remind you that when you get water in your eyes because you're swimming, and of course there are times that you try to see underwater and you can't, it's an oxymoronic thing because of course there's water in your eye, but why do your eyes get dry? Why do your eyes burn when there is a cool liquid fluid coming in contact with the eyeball? You know what I mean? Like, it is a little bit oxymoronic and paradoxical in that particular juncture. But at the same time, considering the fact that we do have to understand and use that analogy that we're fully immersed in water energy the minute that we move into Pisces season, it does make a lot more sense when you consider the fact that, energetically speaking, we're out in the ocean right now. So the eyes, there's going to be a hard time adjusting to the light of the world. There's going to be a hard time seeing things clearly. Pisces energy, specifically with Mercury now in Pisces energy, everything is very vague and very cloudy. Like, you can kind of see the figure of what is in front of you, but you can't really focus in on the details. Like, the boundaries, the lines aren't super clear. Nothing is super detailed or definitive because, of course, that's Virgo energy that sits across from Pisces energy. Everything is kind of blurry. Everything is kind of vague. And so we have to understand that that's going to manifest not only in our eyesight, but in our understanding of what the future looks like for us. Everything is kind of there. We can kind of see shapes forming and coming together. We can kind of see a plan, idea, a visual for the future taking form, but it's not very detailed. It's very vague and off in the distance. And so our eyes are going to have some major adjustment energies to kind of help us see, I'm going to say, the vague figure, but also, again, it comes back to having trust and faith that everything will be revealed when you are ready to accept what will be revealed. And I know that sounds pretty vague, but that's what Pisces energy is all about. Sometimes we're not meant to know. Sometimes we're not meant to see. Sometimes there are certain things that need to happen in our lives in order for us to be prepared enough to see things as clearly as we want to see them right now. We are not there yet. We will be there towards the end of Pisces season, but we're just jumping into these Piscean waters. So we're nowhere near ready for that full picture, ready for that full truth, ready for the details of the plan that we are essentially craving very badly right now. Because of this water, I want you to, first of all, keep water to you. Okay, we're going to be hydrated as hell, even though we've been gulping mouthfuls of this water, this ocean water that we shouldn't be gulping. But there's a puffiness that takes over. So you may find that your hands, like your fingers, are a little bit puffy and swollen, that your face may be a little bit puffy and swollen. It is a little bit oxymoronic too, because even though there's this puffiness, we're also seeing some wrinkles be more defined now than ever. So again, Pisces energy is just as much about death endings and closures as it is about rebirth, resurrection, and beginnings. And we're seeing that happen equally. So where, it doesn't make sense if your face is like all puffed out, you really shouldn't have wrinkles, right? But yet there are particular wrinkles that are being defined, probably around the eyes, because again, we're being squinty-eyed at this particular juncture. But at the same time, just understand that we're going to be carrying a lot of water weight, specifically in our legs. And this is why, again, having the sea legs and having restless legs and, all of that weight be kind of focused in the legs. We gotta continue moving, dance the pain out, dance the aches and restlessness out, the ants out of your legs. Like, we really have to just double down on making sure that we are creating movement so that we're not allowing this water weight to kind of, set up camp and, of course, create a lot of dysfunction and dis-ease in our physical bodies because of it. What I would also want to say is that if you find that you are eating more, which I actually don't think we're going to, I think we're moving into a more nauseous phase. Think of being seasick. We're out in the motion of that ocean, being tossed around with no land in sight. The last thing that we're really thinking about is food. And I would say that if we are thinking about food, it would be a hard thing to do to come up with something that you're actually craving and actually continue to eat it and be satisfied with that, I think that nausea is definitely going to creep back up more so than any of us would prefer. But what I'm getting at is on top of the water weight, if you are eating food, even if you're not eating food, there might be this weird instance where you're actually gaining weight and it doesn't make sense because you're not eating enough to gain weight. But at the same time, again, everything is over exaggerated. Everything is taking on more form. Everything is sensitized. Everything is just hypersensitive. And we just have to be a little bit more mindful about that. So, again, oxymoronic thing, if we're totally submerged in water, it wouldn't make sense for us to have dry skin, you wouldn't think, but we are going to be pruned up, wrinkled, and definitely on the drier side of things. And yes, to a certain extent, Aquarius season dried us out because it was an air season. We're being thrown into a water energy, which should add a little bit of moisture back into things, but not at the beginning. I think we're going to see that probably midway towards the end of Pisces season. I think that the dryness is definitely still going to be a thing. But again, how can you get out of the pool or get out of the ocean and get out of the bath and, where you're totally immersed in water and in moisture and be wrinkled up, pruned up, and dry? Like, it's just, it's a weird situation to think about. So the dryness, I think, is going to be probably facial and hands, because again, we're bringing our creator abilities online. So there's a lot of energy in our hands. But also I think there's a lot of attention on our lips. I think your lips are going to be dried out more than normal. You may even crack your lip, split your lip. Mercury is in Pisces energy. And so again, that is the mouth. And we're not really communicative people in this particular Piscean energy because our inner realms are alive and well, but we can't really communicate and articulate a lot of what's going on in our inner realm to the outer realm. And so a lot of energy gets kind of trapped in our mouths. And so I feel like our lips, our dried lips, cracked lips, definitely going to be a thing. But even on the inside of our mouths, you could get those little bumpies back. Those little water blisters that come and go with certain ascension symptoms and seasons and cycles that we're in. I think they're coming back. And so they're not really like canker sores. They're just like these little water blister things or little bumpies on your tongue or whatever. Again, a lot of sensitivity, like we're jacked up on sensitivity. And so what could be super normal, like, not a lot of things change in our day to day or in our diet or whatever. We're just reacting in an over exaggerated way to because of the level of sensitivity that our physical body is now feeling due to the amount of energy that's coming into the physical form that we are now learning how to channel essentially the hard way. And I mean the hard way because ascension symptoms are popping off and making us feel very achy, very cold, very tired, very overwhelmed. And so, guys, I think that, the buzzy feeling that many of us have been kind of feeling through this Aquarius energy is going to subside just a bit, but it does kind of border on extremes. So you could go from buzzy to absolutely numb, and then feeling absolutely everything to absolutely nothing. And then being hella excited and inspired, and then hella depressed and absolutely defeated. And we're just going to have to learn how to ride those waves. So, of course, dream activity has already picked up. We're going to expect the dreamscaping to take a totally different turn through Pisces season. This is a very powerful time for dreamscaping. And so over on my Patreon, we've been doing a lot of dream work and numerology work and understanding the certain signs and symbols to look for in your dreamscaping in order to kind of unpack and reveal some of the cryptic messaging that, of course, is coming from our unconscious selves in hopes that our conscious selves can make it conscious so that we can work with it in our day-to-day waking lives. And so we're going to expect dreams to take a little bit more of an intense turn, I would say, more of an emotional, dramatic type of turn as well. And a lot of past situations, circumstances, people, places, and things reappearing in our dreamscape. And again, this is just a precursor setting us up for what is going to be a very impactful retrograde season coming at us, because not only is Mercury retrograding, but Venus will be retrograding as well. And they are retrograding together in the exact same degrees, in the exact same signs, which means that our heart and our head are going to be totally reformatted. But we're not there yet. So guys, I'm taking a look at my list. I think I've covered everything that I want to cover. I think that we are in for a dramatic shift here this week. So put your floaties on, get your swimsuit on, grab a noodle, pool noodle, and maybe even a life jacket. And let's prepare to dive into the deep end. So I thank you so much for tuning in. I thank you for being here, for showing up for me, but mostly for showing up for yourself. I thank you for spending your time, your energy, your attention, not only with me, but with the community here. And I thank you so much for tuning in. I send you nothing but love, and let's do the fanciest deep dive into the deep end that we could possibly do. Sending you so much love. We'll talk to you soon.